One thing that makes this Shabbat special is that we have a chance to honor and thank Rabbi Satz for his 5 years of service to Holy Blossom Temple. And during the Kiddush lunch, in his honor, there'll be a few words spoken to him, to Rabbi Elster, his wife Janice, and to their 2 boys, Eitan and Ami. But for now, let me say this before he addresses the congregation for this last formal sermon, although there will be many opportunities over the coming weeks to learn from him, and I encourage you to come and participate. Rabbi Satz, I'd like to highlight 3 aspects of your rabbinate. The first is rabbi as teacher. First and foremost, you are rabbi as teacher. And when your congregation, B'nai Or, that congregation that will be so blessed to call you rabbi, when they called me to inquire about you, I said, Rabbi Satz is a rabbi. And I heard silence on the end of the line, wondering, well, isn't that obvious, Rabbi Spolansky? And so I explained, Rabbi Satz is a teacher, first and foremost. And you have brought your wisdom to Holy Blossom Temple. You live by that slogan of lifelong learning. You're not only a teacher of Torah, but you are a student of Torah. You take that seriously. You have helped us to establish the Melton School of Adult Learning here at Holy Blossom Temple. You have brought Torah out to the people through the downtown and midtown business ethics class. You have also touched so many lives, really changed lives through your teaching of Musar, about character development, that collection of Jewish literature that teaches the virtues of a valuable life. And you live by those virtues too. And the one that I'd like to highlight that we see in you, Michael, is the virtue of humility. You often talk about what we can do and what we can't do, what we can know and what we can't know. And so we thank you for your teachings, first and foremost. We also thank you for the role you play as rabbi, as pastor, rabbi who brings consolation and care to those who need it. You have officiated at numerous funerals, bringing care and attention to recent mourners, and I know people have felt changed by your rabbinic guidance at those moments. You also never hesitate to go to visit someone in the hospital or at the bedside when they are in need of your prayers. And the third aspect that I'd like to highlight among the many roles that you play in the community, Rabbi Satz, is rabbi as bridge builder. You have taken a leading role in interfaith relationships in the city of Toronto through Faith in the City and other initiatives. Just last week, you hosted an iftar dinner here at Holy Blossom Temple so that many Muslims came to break bread here and to get to know us and build bridges among neighbors. And just on the horizon, June 17th, is a program that you have helped to shape called From Hate to Hope, where Marnie Feinberg, who is the daughter-in-law of Joyce Feinberg, Aleh Shalom, and also an imam from Quebec City who witnessed the shootings there, will come to talk about anti-Semitism and Islamophobia and inspire us to go from hate to hope. That is thanks to you and your leadership. So Rabbi Satz, you have made your mark on us. You have made a lasting impression on this congregation as a whole and on so many of us as individuals, including me. And we are so grateful to you for that. I would say, Michael, speaking personally now, I'm especially grateful for how not long after your arrival, I learned that I wasn't well enough to serve the congregation full-time for a number of months, and you really rose to the occasion then just when I needed you most, and I'll never forget it. So we thank you for your teachings. We will miss you, and we know that you will bring so many gifts to the people of B'nai Or. They will be strengthened by you. And we salute you now, wishing you well, wishing your family every blessing at this new chapter in your lives together. We pray that you will go only from strength to strength. Rabbi Satz, please come and teach us your Torah.
I don't know if you know, I came, my position before this was in California, and everybody hugs in California. And I came here and not as many hugs. But Canadians are very nice, of course. But I work with a lot of B'nai Mitzvah kids, and often I help them write their Divrei Torah. And often we have to take out the part of the Dvar Torah that they put in thank yous. But it's always nice to thank people, but it's not always appropriate in the middle of the Torah service. And sometimes I joke around with them and say, "Oh, it's not an Oscar speech. You can do that at your lunch." But I feel it's hard to receive a thank you. For me at least, and I've talked about this in our Musar classes, we've talked about this, but I want to give thank yous, so I'm breaking my rule. I'm not going to name names because there's too many people to name, and I will leave people out, and I don't want to do that, but all of the congregants that I have worked with over these 5 years, the Bikor Cholim Committee, Israel, Adult Ed, Social Action, Interfaith, all the spiritual seekers and meditators and people exploring Judaism, and the B'nai Mitzvah families, and people of all life cycles. With all my heart, I say thank you for being part of this community, because as part of this community you've given me strength as a rabbi and inspiration, and it's because of families like all of you, families, individuals, that I find joy in this work. Of course, I thank the staff, the professionals here at Holy Blossom, especially all of the different assistants that I have worked with over the last few years. Our senior staff, our rabbis, Rabbi Helfman, who thank you for letting me burst into your office all the time, especially now that our offices are next to each other and I bounce ideas or complain about something or just to have a break. Thank you, of course, to Rabbi Spolansky, who's been a mentor, who has been has been a great person to look up to, but really to see how a rabbi leads a congregation with real dignity and grace and passion. And thank you. I pray to take that with me to our cantors, Ben Meisner and Lindy Rivers, who have often made me cry in prayer, especially Lindy, who are partners in the High Holy Days. It's a gift to be a rabbi at a congregation where you can pray and pray with real passion, and a lot of that is because of all of you too. But of course, I thank my family, Ami and Eitan, who when you two were born, you made me into an adult and into a real rabbi, and taught me patience and humility, and you were my true Musar teachers. But I think especially my wife Janice, who always, she's really the rabbi that I aspire to be, and she has been my counsel and my encourager and my my partner, and I love you. So, how did I end up here at Holy Blossom? People asked me when I got here, and they knew I came most recently from San Diego, and they said, you do know it gets cold here. But I was looking for a new position, and Rabbi Splansky called me up, maybe breaking the rules of the search process, I'm not sure, and told me that I should apply. Now, of course, I knew the reputation of Holy Blossom as someone growing up active in the Reform movement, going to Hebrew Union College. Of course, you know of Holy Blossom Temple because of the Torah and the reputation of Rabbi Plaut, and I knew, I met Rabbi Marmer during rabbinical school. His son, Michael, was a mentor of mine. So I knew Holy Blossom was a place of deep learning, a place of serious Judaism. But really, probably the reason I ended up here is probably because Rabbi Karen Tamasho put in a good word for me, who is a long friend of my wife's and I's. But a rabbi a congregation that can nurture her, I knew was the right place to be. And so I hope, as I move to Morristown, New Jersey in a few weeks, to bring this love of learning, this passion for prayer, this sense of history and involvement in really the world. And every day as a rabbi there, part of Holy Blossom will be with me. So there's my Oscar speech. But now a Devar Torah. Our portion this week, of course, is the end of Vayikra, the end of the book of Leviticus. And I want to start with a quote by Rabbi Shai Held, a contemporary rabbi, I think one of the great Jewish thinkers today, who we had the honor of bringing to Holy Blossom in the fall. And he writes, in evoking the transformation that Israel has undergone, this transformation from slavery to freedom, Leviticus employs a graphic and poignant image. I am the eternal your God who brought you out from the land of Egypt to be their slaves no more, who brought the bars of your yoke and made you walk upright. This word for upright in Hebrew, komamiyut. This last word, this komamiyut, is critical. In the ancient world, work animals were tied to heavy yokes. In Egypt, the Torah suggests, the Israelites were so abused and exploited under Pharaoh's brutal reign that they were reduced to beasts of burden. Rabbi Ovadia Sforno, the Renaissance commentator, explains that the Israelites were forced to lie prostrate on the ground while others walked on them, treating their backs like the ground, like a street for a passerby. In freeing the slaves, God removed the yoke that had so oppressed them, enabling them to stand tall again for the first time in centuries. The aptness of the biblical metaphor is apparent. A person who is subjugated, upon whom a yoke is placed, is bent over. Once the bars are broken, this person can stand tall at full stature. Liberated from their torment, the Israelites could finally stand upright, afraid of any creature. So says the Midrash Sifra. Komamiyut, to walk upright. I always have to remind myself to stand straight with my shoulders back. To walk upright, to have dignity. In the traditional version of Ahava Rabbah, morning prayer, it pleads for God to gather us from the four corners of the earth and lead us, komamiyut b'artzenu, lead us upright to our land. To walk upright is to have dignity. Rabbi Held continues, the verse implicitly contrasts what it means to be a slave to Pharaoh with what it means to be a servant to God. Pharaoh places the Israelites under a back-breaking and soul-crushing yoke, whereas God invites them to stand tall. Subtly, the Torah indicates that to serve God and to stand upright are not mutually contradictory. On the contrary, one cannot really serve God without a robust sense of one's own dignity. True divine service depends on those who serve standing tall. You see, having dignity is not the same thing as having pride. Dignity, so says our verse here, has to do with serving God, or serving God by serving others, while pride is about serving yourself. We went from being slaves of Pharaoh to being servants of God. It says, right before that verse that I quoted about dignity, these verses, I will establish my abode in your midst, and I will not spurn you. I will be ever present in your midst. I will be your God, and you shall be my people. This service is what makes God ever present. This is what dignity is. And Rabbi Splansky mentioned my study and teaching of Musar. This is what Musar is. Training oneself to be a better Eved Hashem, a servant of God. To walk in God's ways of love and humility and patience, to be a mensch. We like to talk about Jewish pride, feeling good about being a Jew, but what we should really be talking about is Jewish dignity, that which comes from service. When we say our central prayer, the Amidah, which we did, an hour ago, we stand upright. We do bow a little bit, not too much, that would be showing off. But we stand upright. But as you see over the ark, it says, Da lifnei mi ata omed. Know before whom you stand. We are standing upright, back straight, with dignity. But it is in covenant with God that we walk. We're standing before someone. We're standing with someone. That's what standing upright in dignity for a Jew means. So a little bit about why I became interested in Musar. I've told this various times the last few years. I once read an article in the late great Reform Judaism magazine about how liberal congregations were starting to study and practice Musar, and interviewed a man named Alan Marinas who wrote a book. And so this was probably in 2009 or so. I bought his book, I read it, I thought this was interesting. I started incorporating it into sermons. I thought, well, this will be a good spiritual path for me, maybe. There's some meditation involved. Everybody says meditation is great. But I realized that was for me, my pride, for having something under my belt to be able to teach, to be. Congregational rabbis are not experts in anything. We're decent at a lot of different things, but maybe I could say I'm a little more expert at this by studying this literature. But then I realized that's not what it's about. You study, you practice, you meditate so that you can serve others. And so I had the opportunity when I was here at Holy Blossom to go on my first retreat with the Musar Institute, where they taught me to be a facilitator of their programs. And I brought them here not knowing if people would sign up. And people did. And therefore, I had the honor of going on a journey of service with others here in this congregation. And you all have blessed my life and my rabbinate for that. I hope through the study I've become a better rabbi. I hope that I've become a better person, a better father, a better husband. It's always a struggle. There's always things that we need to work on. And so I want to continue with this theme of dignity, though, with a story that I've told before, but it's one of my favorite, a story of Rabbi Yisrael Salanter, the 19th century Lithuanian rabbi who was the founder of the modern Musar movement. He was invited to eat at a wealthy man's house. At the beginning of the meal, a woman, the wealthy man's servant, brings a pitcher of water over so that the men eating can do the ritual hand washing. And the rabbi takes only a little bit of water for the ritual, just the minimum required by halakha, by Jewish law, to say the blessing. And his host turns to him and says, "Rabbi, I'm a rich man. You could use as much water as you like." And so the rabbi asks him, "Well, who brings this water from the well?" And the rich man says, "Well, the maid right here, of course. What, you think I do it?" The rabbi says, "So, if I use all the water that I want, this kind woman will have to schlep back to the well for more water. The minimum amount of water is therefore required." Required, he said. Here, Yisrael Salanter's decency actually helps the burden of the maid, gives her dignity, has her stand up tall. To the rabbi, she is not just a maid, she is a woman created in the image of God who deserves kindness, and he sees it as his obligation to serve her. Not only does he see it as his obligation, he knows that this is what the Torah and God demand of him, demand of us. Every person we encounter gives us the opportunity to serve. Not just some kind of kindness or warm feeling, but to actually do something. It might be small at first, but as Bob Dylan sings, you got to serve somebody. It might be the devil or it might be the Lord, but you got to serve somebody. I love to quote song lyrics, and Rabbi Moskowitz sitting here, sometimes I would burst into his office too just to chat, and because of him and because I'm moving to New Jersey, I have to not quote Bob Dylan or Leonard Cohen anymore, but I have to now quote Bruce Springsteen. So I'll find something that fits, but you got to serve somebody. It might be the devil or it might be the Lord. When we serve somebody, when we make sure that they are standing tall, we are serving God. The other that we are loving and serving is God's image. That's what it means in our Torah portion here, for God to be present with you, with the people. I've been privileged to be able to serve you all. It's been my honor. But this is a congregation of service. Just come down in the cold months on a Thursday night to Out of the Cold, and you see our people talking to marginalized people, not as marginalized people, but as guests. They are standing tall. When we visit people in their homes because they're sick, because they can't get out on their own, when we go down, when we call people at the hospital, when they're in the hospital, when we call people who are mourning, when we just show up at a shiva, that's God's presence, opening the door. And it's been my great honor to help start, organize for refugees, to help start a new initiative, the Luke Sklar Mental Health Initiative, to help people who are marginalized in many different ways. But we know that serving, helping people stand, commute with dignity, that is bringing God's presence. Back to Rabbi Held. Leviticus teaches us that to live in covenant with God is to stand tall. To serve God is to act upon the world. We have the dignity to be able to do this. Shabbat Shalom.